Oh wait a minute,
It's on. We're live.
Or was it the blue button? Okay. Was it the red button that launched the rocket, or the blue button? Because I know the other one launches the nuclear missile.
Just don't get launch and lunch confused. There's a dated one for people who shared the same childhood I did.
I think I saw a joke like that one time, although I think it was on The Simpsons or something. Yeah, there's a guy sleeping at sleeping at a Soviet launch site, and the guy goes, "Launch!" To announce it's lunchtime, and he's like, "Launch!" Oh, okay, beep.
Yeah, this was one of those old Sid and Marty Krofft. It was shown along with the cartoons, but it was live action, and it had Bob Denver, who played Gilligan on Gilligan's Island. So the idea is they were The idea is they were loading up all the supplies for the rocket ship, and so you put in breakfast and you hit breakfast, and you put in lunch and you hit lunch, but he accidentally hits launch, and they go out into space.
Yeah, well, someone, if there ever is a nuclear war, here's my only request. I want to be on the first bomb that's dropped so I can wear a cowboy hat and go, "Wow! Wow, ride him!"
Chris!
Yeah.
And with that out of the way, let me welcome everyone to the Zoom live stream.
Corner live stream thing.
What? No one's a fan of Dr. Strangelove?
Yeah. How I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. Yes, that was a great one.
How I learned to, or in this case, net neutrality. How I stopped worried and laughed at the cringe.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. You know, in universe, there's something wrong with the political spectrum when an ex-Nazi is the voice of reason. Yeah.
Before we get on going, let me just say one thing right quick. We are doing this on the main channel again. I thought I'd give it one more try over here, and we might do it over on the live stream channels next time. But if you look up in the corner, you should see a card that's a poll, and I'm also going to have polls on the supporter channels on Patreon and Maker Support. Do you want to keep doing the live streams here, or do you want to go over to the separate live stream channel? Because there's advantages and disadvantages of doing both. The main problem with the live stream channel is since I don't have 1,000 subscribers there yet, then there's a whole lot of stuff that we can't do, like the super chats and stuff like that. But just let me know what you think, because this does kind of seem out of place, I think, on my main channel. So if we do it over on the live stream channel, and then maybe I could do like an edited highlights over on this one. We're getting a lot of noise.
Why didn't you do one for last month's stream? Me and Daniel were going at it.
Last month's stream, I'm sorry, I just kind of want to forget that happened. That was not.
I wasn't present because my boss decided to schedule me on a Monday.
You see, that's why we had the dead air. Chris wasn't here.
Yeah.
But now Chris here, so.
Oh, there's Daniel.
Yeah, here he is.
Joy, my favorite person.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
By the way, I think this is the time. I think this is the first time we've seen Chris on cam, so we get to see what his ugly mug looks like.
Yeah. I don't know. I look pretty. I'm dead sexy.
See, you found the secret. You found the secret, Chris.
It's like, what is even going on here?
Wait up, Johnny. You found, Chris, the secret for looking good. Hang around ugly guys like us.
Shane!
It reminds me of that one Family Guy episode.
Also, who invited Edward Kenway onto the stream?
Johnny, I was about to say something. It reminds me about Family Guy back when they were funny, when Meg, is all alone, and after Peter becomes the CEO of a tobacco company, they hire a really ugly actress, and she's like, "Why are you standing next to me? I was hired to stand next to you so you'll look pretty by comparison." Yeah.
Yep.
Huh.
I've actually heard some people actually say you should try to do that, like have some friends who aren't the prettiest, hang out with you in a chick place. That way, chicks will see you and they'll think, "Hey, he's the only decent looking guy here." I mean, it's either him.
You look better if you have ugly guy friends but a pretty girlfriend.
Yeah.
Also, Troll Jones in the chat asked, "What is going on here? Even
I don't know. This
greatness."
I don't know. This live stream is so top secret, even we don't know.
Anyway, welcome to the May Hidden Stream 2.0.
And someone gets a cookie if they can get that reference.
I didn't quite hear it.
I said this live stream is so top secret, even we don't know what it is.
Huh.
We make so many references that nobody gets.
It's from Red versus Blue and that Halo parody series. Yeah, there's a special forces team of Spartans, and they're told by their commanding, and when they're asked what they're doing here, they're like, we don't know. We were sent on an absolutely top secret mission. Even we don't know about it.
Garibaldi on Babylon 5 would say things like that. They'd ask him, like, yeah, but you don't know about this? He says, well, I'm chief of security. What kind of chief of security would I be if I let someone like me know about this?
Where did that open chat window option go?
Oh, I got it, Daniel.
You got to look at Shane.
Oh.
Yeah, some dude posting memes ask, what is this? I don't know. Why are we here, Daniel?
Why are any of us here?
From the mysteries of life.
I've been wondering that a lot lately.
Yeah.
I've been freaking out about my own mortality.
Oh, existential crisis. I've had a few of those.
Oh yeah. Of my own mortality.
I get freaked out sometimes, really freaked out just by the idea of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And that I am actually self-aware, but that one day that's going to stop, and then that's not going to. And how does that make it what? And how does. And I just got it makes my brain explode.
Says, Shane Killian, your graphs are ultra helpful. I think that's aimed at you, buddy.
By the way, speaking of which, Shane, any thoughts on Ray Kurzweil?
Don't know who that is.
He's a futurist, and I mean, I think the futurists. By the way, just so people know what Atomic ANCAP's talking about, I think he's talking about those graphs I made a while back, where I have on the x-axis, it's an XY scatter plot. The x-axis is economic freedom, and then the y-axis is various different metrics, and showing how we're better off.
Oh, Rebecca Titus was something for us to talk about. So something happened here crazy happened here in Dayton. I'm assuming she's talking about Dayton, Florida. All right, hang on.
Anyway, you were saying, Shane?
Yeah. So anyway, Ray Kurzweil, he's a futurist, and he seems to have the same problem that most futurists do, which is they overestimate the near term and underestimate the long term. And I've said this before, I think, but I've found that science fiction writers actually do a little bit of a better job with that than futurists do.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Also,
I mean, especially more of the hard science fiction writers.
Oh, by the by, guys.
Except L. Ron Hubbard.
I said hard science fiction, not fantasy.
Yeah. Actually, South Park was wrong. L. Ron Hubbard wasn't really a science fiction writer. He wrote more or less everything. I mean, he had like 500 novels and short stories published, so he did everything, you know.
Yeah, and he still wasn't that much of a success.
Yeah, the Church of Scientology loves to say that. They love to say, did you know L. Ron Hubbard has the Guinness Book of World Record for most stories published? And you want to say, well, yeah, but that's just the number. Are they actually good?
One thinks of monkeys banging away on typewriters. There's probably a Hamlet in there somewhere just out of sheer randomness.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rebecca Titus says, so something crazy happened here in Dayton. One lady was being arrested for stealing ice cream from a store. Once the cop was trying to get her in cuffs, the lady smashed the ice cream at the cop's face. I'm assuming this is in Florida.
I'm sure that's happened quite a number of times.
Oh, speaking of which,
this takes place in Florida. There's
a Dayton, Ohio, and there's a Dayton. Isn't there a Dayton, Tennessee? I mean, there's Dayton in like several different states, so she'll have to tell us which one it is.
I'm assuming it's Florida, and I do not know why. Could it be because, and I'm just thinking out loud here, the water?
Yeah. Actually, speaking of that thing, it reminds me of this funny police brutality joke I told at work one time that I had all my coworkers laughing. Okay, so here's what happens: a police officer is on court because he's being put on police brutality charges because he tased a person excessively. So the judge walks up to him and says, "Officer, why did you tase this man excessively?" The officer goes, listen, Your Honor, I can explain. See, I was reaching for my gun."
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I meant to shoot him, but I grabbed my taser by accident. Also reminds me, I'm pretty sure you've heard of the classic, but here's another classic police brutality joke. A police officer.
Kentucky. Oh.
You want to continue, Johnny, or me?
Dayton, Kentucky. Way to get my hopes up, Rebecca.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, here's another classic one. So a police officer is calling the dispatcher saying, "Listen, dispatch, I don't know what I should do. I don't know what I should do because he's a rookie cop. I just shot this guy and I think he's dead." Okay,
first,
officer.
Okay. First, make sure he's dead.
Yeah.
And then gunshots are heard over the phone. Okay, now what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if Richard Wiseman had anything to do with it or if he just reported on it, but there was this survey of people all over the world to find the funniest joke in the world. And the one you just told, was actually the one that made the funniest joke, but no country selected that one as its funniest joke. It's just that a lot of the funniest jokes are ones that are specific to a particular culture. And that was the only one that the funniest one that was kind of universal.
Yeah. Oh, here's another one. Here's another one that's considered the funniest joke ever. Okay, so two philosophers decide that they're gonna go on a camping trip. They pitch up their tent and go to bed. They wake up in the middle of the night because they can't sleep. And the one philosopher says to the other, "Well, look up at the sky and what do you see?" And his friend says, "I see a lot of stars." And what does that tell you?
Well, if there's stolen our tent.
You ruined it, Daniel. I hate you.
Daniel, stop.
Don't worry, I hate him too, Chris.
Yeah.
Tell it anyway, Chris, because I didn't get all that.
Basically the way it works is, so he tells his buddy, "Look up at the sky. What do you see?" "I see hundreds of stars." "And what does that mean?" "Well, if there's billions of stars in our galaxy, there's a high probability that some of those stars have planets, and if those planets have moons and such, there's a good possibility there might be life on some of them, so we may not be the only ones in this universe." And the other philosopher whacks his friend on the head and says, "No, you idiot! Someone stole our tent!"
Yeah, I heard that one as a Sherlock Holmes joke.
Yeah, NCAP Rattlesnake in the chat says, "So, Shane Killian, how are you guys doing today?"
Well, I should go ahead and tell you the reason why I'm not on cam is because I'm just getting over a sinus infection and I look like crap.
Tank, I'll have you know very much.
I'm sure you can't look much more like crap than usual.
That's true.
Daniel! This guy hosts the Bogosity podcast, so I suggest you show him a little respect.
You see, Daniel, here's the thing you have to remember. I have editing power. I can make it out like you said all sorts of crap.
Yeah. Just like CNN did when they were talking to that one student.
Oh, we do not bring up he who shall not be named.
What, Rian Johnson?
No!
It wasn't me this time. It wasn't me.
I hate you so much, Chris. You are a garbage human. You know that? Oh my god.
Speaking of which, though, me and Shane were thinking about bringing this up on the podcast because this is kind of in Shane's territory. Kathleen Kennedy, I don't know if she's done it yet, but she's being heavily pressured to resign from Lucasfilms now.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and talk about that? Because I don't think we probably won't cover that.
I don't know if she's done it officially yet, but there's a lot of pressure, and there's even rumors that if she doesn't resign, she's going to be fired because basically after the Solo movie bombed, they're starting to be like, okay, Kathleen, our movies are not making money. And then of course she did the usual. She blamed, it was the white male fans that ruined it. And
say what?
your bosses are going, okay, Kathleen, you gotta leave because you're not working, and it's sad because people say, but wasn't Kathleen Kennedy, involved in Empire Strikes Back? Yeah, as the producer. What's going on with Lucasfilms, I told you this, Shane, it's a perfect example of how just because you're a good producer does not mean you're a good director or leader in the film industry.
Or indeed should have any creative input whatsoever.
Yeah, I think there was a Family Guy episode about that where it says, look.
Hell, George Lucas proved that already.
His movies always did better when someone else did the writing and directing.
Yeah,
Rebecca Titus with some more news from Dayton, Kentucky says, in other news, we had a car accident from a drug overdose. Guy was driving and hit a bar. I thought the guy drove and said, take a Dr. Choco Blues.
Okay, so a blind guy walks into a bar.
Oh, God.
And says, ouch.
Way to ruin it, Shane.
No, pretty much the punchline.
This is the Mogosity Comedy Hour, people.
I heard that one with
waitresses.
I heard that one with a literalist.
Oh, you had one. So a guy walks into a bar. A second guy walks into the bar. And a third guy ducks under it.
So, do you guys know how to keep an idiot in suspense?
Dangle him up, drop him into a drink, and then burn him, and then pour salt on him until he's no longer in this plane of existence?
Yeah, I think you messed up the joke there, Johnny.
Doggone it!
Yeah.
Way to kill the reference! I mean,
no, you were supposed to say, how do you keep an idiot in suspense? You say, I don't know, how do you keep an idiot in suspense? And then the first guy doesn't answer.
What's the difference between a rooster and a lawyer?
What's the difference between a what and a lawyer?
A rooster!
A rooster and a lawyer. I don't know.
A rooster clucks defiance. Okay, so three engineers are debating over what type of engineer God is. The first says, God is clearly a computer engineer. The brain is the most advanced computer ever made. The second says, no, God is a mechanical engineer. The heart is an amazing pump. Plus, there's all the other muscles and organs. And the third says, no, God is a civil engineer. Who else would route waste disposal to a recreational area?
Yep.
I would have gone with number 4.
Number 4?
Yeah, religion. Yeah, religion. I know they're just gonna ignore me, but I would just love to ask those religious people. So I'm going to hell for this. Yeah, because it says in the Bible. I don't know. What about the teachings of Amaterasu? I mean, she's considered a holy figure, and she's been around longer than the Bible ever has.
The Bible doesn't actually have. The Bible doesn't actually have a concept of hell.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, I actually read an interesting thing like that. Like there's all these things that that religious people say will happen to you because it's in the Bible, but it's not actually in the Bible.
Well, and it's like they make such a big deal over the Antichrist. There is no Antichrist mentioned in the book of Revelation. The epistles of John mention the Antichrist, but he talks about lots of Antichrists and says there have been a lot of Antichrists up till this point, and there will continue to be more, He's not talking about one person who will destroy the world.
Or like how in the book of Revelation, or like how in the book of Revelations, people like to say that's proof that the end of the world is coming, even though several actual, pastors and preachers who study this, as part of their job, they say, no, the book of Revelations does not talk about the end of the world. It talks about, bad things happening, but it's not the end of the world.
There's a lot of them who say that he was writing in code.
Meg says they're all memes.
It was writing in code for the politicians of his day, and he had to write in code because he would have been executed otherwise. But supposedly, like the beast and the number of the beast, which is 616, by the way, not 666, refers to Nero and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which,
by the way, Emperor Nero did not play the fiddle when Rome burned down. They did not have fiddles back then.
Well, and he was very he did have a lot of fun playing the liar. But I mean, what he actually did, first of all, he didn't burn it down. Apparently
keep up the memes, please.
Yeah.
Apparently,
he wasn't like how that one. Oh, sorry, Shane.
Apparently, it started over in this area where they were selling all of these different oils. And yes, it happened because of zoning, because they said if you want to sell oil, this is where you go, and oil's flammable, so that's where it started. But Nero actually was very active and helped call up the forces to fight the fire. Yeah. And the reason for all of his redesigns wasn't like his big vision that he had wanted to implement. That's why he started the fire. It was done to prevent another fire, so that you have stonework with atriums and things like that instead of just all these wooden buildings.
And actually, I also read that while he was playing the liar, while the city was burning while they were fighting the fire, he wasn't singing in celebration. He was actually mourning. He was trying to get people's spirits up. Yeah. I mean. Yeah, that's the thing about Nero, is that, Nero's one of those figures where, he did a lot of really fucked up stuff, but he did have a good side to him,
Assassinating his own mother.
Well, it's kind of like Robespierre. I mean, Robespierre is like one of the worst guys from history, except for, like Hitler and people like that. He wasn't that bad. But I mean, he did all these horrible things, executing anyone who, threatened him or even disagreed with him slightly. But at the same time, he did things like abolish slavery.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Here's the thing. If you really want to talk about fucked up Roman emperors, just look up Caligula.
Oh, yeah.
I would rather not. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
No one wants to look up Caligula's anything.
Ever seen, Shane, ever seen the Malcolm McDowell movie involving Caligula?
Or
I've at least heard of it.
Which was the one? I've at least heard of it, but I can't remember which one I saw. I think the one I saw had Patrick Stewart playing Claudius or something like that.
No, this one had this one had Malcolm McDowell playing Caligula, and it had sex and all sorts of stuff, and it's pretty funny because I've seen little clips and pieces of it, and people are saying, "Wow, that is one fucked up movie." And one person who's a history buff said, "Thing, the real story is even far more fucked up."
Chris, back up a second because you dropped out there.
Yeah, you kind of roboted.
Oh, I was just saying. I was just saying that people
last month.
Hey, that's homophobic.
No, not you. I'm talking about Atomic ANCAP.
All right, you were saying, Chris.
References out of here.
Guys, don't make me get my mute stick out.
Don't make me break out the psychotic teddy bear.
Now I don't even remember what you were saying before you clicked down.
Yeah,
we kind of have that effect.
Yeah, I was about to say that people were watching the movie Caligula and they were commenting how fucked up it was, and people were saying, if you read the original history, Caligula was even more fucked up. I mean, that guy, he
elected his horse consulate, I know.
Yeah, he elected his horse as a consulate. He destroyed a bunch of ships just so he could build a giant bridge to cross, a river because of Seer might be able to do it. He also got his sister pregnant, his cousin pregnant. He married the wife of a Roman guard who he executed, by the way. Just he did all sorts of fucked up shit.
Yeah, he was kind of crazy.
Yeah, but none of it broke Daniel, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh?
Yeah. Trump is not the craziest leader the world has ever seen.
But he is the winningest.
Oh, that's a good joke, Atomic ANCAP. He said the funniest joke ever. He says, "What's the difference between an ISIS space and a children's school?" I don't know. Well, neither can the drone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was darker than...
Blacker than a moonless night. Hotter and more bitter than hell itself.
Yeah.
Papa Xanax there, guy.
Yeah, It's like people always say,
on
what if
Hulu, on this whole Caligula thing, he ate their babies. Oh God.
To be fair, they do taste pretty good.
Especially if they've never walked before and it's kind of like veal, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, reminds me of that funny joke, you know, it's like I think it was on Robot Chicken. There's a guy, he's the only survivor of a cruise liner crash, and he's eating a bunch of odd-looking meat, and he's crying, going, "It's just veal. That's all it is. It's just veal."
Oh, Shane, Daniel, you're both dead inside. You know that?
Yeah. Existential crisis will do that to you.
Oh, God.
No, sorry, guys. You're not going to see my pretty face for now. I'm going to turn off the camera.
Yeah, maybe your
whatever,
voice will drop out less if you do that.
And the hangout the hangout just gained 100 new viewers.
Oh, really?
I only see 20 viewers. All right. So what else? All right.
I don't know.
Well, one thing I was saying before we started that I'm not going to talk about on the podcast, if y'all wanted to talk about, is the new.
Let's talk about this little nugget that bifocal gaming dropped on our heads. Communist memes are like food in the USSR. Not everyone gets it.
Yeah.
So, Johnny, are you and Daniel just going to go at each other eventually after a while, and then you're just going to start saying, you know how I know you're gay? Your gay jokes at each other?
Chris?
Yeah. Yeah, like those Seth Rogen movies. You know how I know you're gay? Fun fact, that was all improv.
Did you have a rainbow bumper sticker that says, "I like to have balls in my face"?
You know how I know you're gay? You were reading my bumper sticker.
I don't even think you have a bumper sticker.
One from ANCAP Deist. Why do communists make poor socialites? They have no class.
Yeah.
Well, we hear all that.
Except the ruling class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between Daniel's out of nowhere references.
But the best ones, I think, are always the one that comes from the place itself. There's this one that's going around Venezuela.
Uh-huh.
You have a Brit, a Frenchman, and a Venezuelan, and they're at an art gallery, and they're looking at a painting depicting the Garden of Eden, and the Brit says, "Oh, well, you see how the two of them are sharing the apple? That shows British courtesy." And the Frenchman says, no, they're obviously French. See how they're naked? You know, that, like us French, they're comfortable with that. And the Venezuelan says, "No, you got it wrong. They're obviously Venezuelan. They have nothing to wear, little to eat, and are told they're in paradise."
Yeah, until
we have offended religious people.
Until God kicks you out
of like 5 seconds.
Robot Chicken did a really good example about why God kicked Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden. It wasn't because, you know, they sinned. It was because, wait a minute, so we're self-aware now. Wait a minute, so me and my wife were walking around completely naked. My dick's hanging out, her boobs are wobbling everywhere, and you didn't tell us? Well, God, my pussy was right here for your exposure, and you didn't tell me to cover up or something? Well, get out and never come back.
Sounds like a raunchier version of a Dark Matter video.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dark Matter's great.
I'm going to pretend like you three don't know anything. I'd say
I still love the demon character that he introduced.
Oh, he introduced a demon?
When God had sent, like, there's one story where God had sent a demon to go confound someone, Solomon or someone like that. And so God goes down into hell and talks to Lucy. He's like, "I've got the perfect demon for you." And she takes him over, and you see BuzzFeed and InfoWars going at it. And then 9 months later, you've got this, horrible, cross between InfoWars and BuzzFeed. And it's like, the top 10 ways 9/11 was an inside job.
If history is written by the victors, how does French history exist? Well, the French were victorious until 1871, and then they got whipped by the Prussians, and they just haven't been able to move past that since.
Yeah, they become like the Kurt Hawkins of the world stage.
They had how many revolutions in a row until Napoleon finally took over everything and had to be defeated?
Yeah, I think that's another reason why people like to make fun of French is because because I mean, the French like to brag about their military and their empire, but like when you think about it, they are the most politically unstable developed nation in the world. I mean, here's just to show how politically unstable they are. France's official governmental title is the Fifth French Republic.
Well, it's like they had all this thing about they went about, oh, kill the rich and then everything will be great. And so they, did the guillotine stuff and they overthrew them. And then they put Robespierre in power. And then that didn't exactly work out so well. They're like, oh no, Robespierre is horrible. Let's overthrow him. You overthrow Robespierre and then you get Napoleon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean,
potatoing again.
I mean, it's like I saw this funny joke one time where a Frenchman and an American are talking about the American and French Revolution, and the Frenchman is like, I don't understand. How come you Americans think your revolution is superior to our revolution? And he goes, because when we started our revolution, while we did have some hiccups at the beginning, we did everything to guarantee individual liberty. We didn't go around guillotining everyone we disagreed with.
Well, and they also sat down and said, hey, let's write the Declaration of Independence and let's lay out what our principles are, what this is all about, why we're doing this, and what we hope to achieve.
Yeah, whereas the French Revolution was like, yes, those evil bourgeois monarchs are out of power. What do we do now? And then you have people saying, well, we should have the church. We should have the church in power.
This actually reminds me of the Libertines episode.
Then the French are like, we should have
this should be like this whole live stream should be turned into like a Libertines episode. Damn it, get on that.
Are you gonna let me continue, Johnny?
No. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
yeah, whereas the French Revolution ended where it's like, then they're like, well, what do we do now? And then, some were like, well, we should have the church in power. No, we should have we should do what the people in the American colonies are doing and have a republic. No, we should have a people's socialist commune. No, we should have no government. And then you have all these fractions fighting, and one side would take power and they would guillotine everyone else. The other one would take over. They'd guillotine. Everyone was guillotine each other. And then Napoleon said, I got an idea. If you put me in power, I'll make all the guillotines stop and restore France. And they put him in power. And then the first French Empire was born.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how revolutions go. A lot of times, you have the revolution, and then the government that comes into power is just as bad, if not worse, than the one they overthrew.
Yeah. It's like, I get the same thing when I talk about the Cuban Revolution and all that, and I talk about Castro, and people are like, but look at what Batista was doing and all this. And it's like, we're not talking about Batista. We're talking about what Castro was doing.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, according to the
Batista and that ruled.
You can be as terrible and god-awful as you want, as long as you can point to the previous guy and said he did bad things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like, the same thing with the Russian Revolution. I mean, like, it's so funny when I talk to communists, even ones who aren't communists still say, yeah, but if the Russian Revolution ever would have occurred, the Tsar would still be in power and Russia would be a tyrannical monarch. And I'm like, that's weird, because Britain, I mean, they had the English Civil War in the 1600s, but Britain, for the most part, didn't have a violent, revolution, and their monarch slowly became more of a ceremonial title and not absolute power. So,
well, I mean, you did have like wars between the different like royal families over who was going to be in power, but it wasn't really a revolution thing where you. Well,
I forgot to mention. Yeah, the English Civil War wasn't even a war. Yeah, it wasn't even, a war between, to overthrow the monarch. It was between two monarchs over who was going to obtain power.
Well, it was actually between the monarch and Oliver Cromwell, who might as well have been a monarch.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because I've met some British monarchs who say that Oliver Cromwell is the reason why Britain can't work as a republic. And I'm like, Cromwell didn't want Britain to be a republic. He wanted it to basically be a bunch of commonwealths that were ruled under one central authority. So basically a monarch, but it wasn't called a monarch.
Yeah, it was basically dividing him down in a bunch of different states.
Yeah. Yeah, which...
But, so, Daniel.
Yes?
You saw my last Bogosity podcast before I went into a bit of a hiatus due to personal matters, right?
I think I did, yeah.
Why on earth did you think I was making a reference?
Reference to what?
Shane. This is between me and Daniel.
Well,
But
if
anyway.
it's between you and Dan, I mean, you realize you're doing this in a public live stream, right?
Yeah, you're doing it in a public live stream. If you two are gonna have a cat fight and then have a gay sexual affair,
No, we're saving that for later.
Oh, no!
If you're going to do that kind of thing, it has to be pay-per-view. I keep telling you.
yeah.
In my head, I'm stuck between a weeb and Shane. Send help now.
Andrew, you also have Chris to deal with.
Crap.
Sir, you have a gun in your
Sorry, I was just looking over the podcasts recently. I don't remember the last one I watched. The last one with you,
I thought I heard someone say Smurf.
Yeah, someone has like a voice in the background coming
that
out.
was my bad.
It was either Snurf or Smurf.
I was trying to find the podcast in question because I don't remember what you're talking about.
I think it was all right, let's see. Hang on, I think I know what I'm talking about.
If the person in the background said Smurf, don't listen to it unless it's Papa Smurf, because Papa Smurf knows what's best for all of us, and Papa Smurf knows everything, and Papa Smurf.
We get it.
Shut up, Brainy.
Now, kids, shut up while I try to find this stupid thing.
I never could figure out why there was only one female Smurf. I mean, how does that work?
Actually,
Don't
she
ask.
was not a natural born Smurf.
Yeah. Wasn't she created by Gargamel?
Yes.
Yeah. Gargamel created her because he hoped that all the male Smurfs would become horny and fight over her and ultimately destroy themselves, and then he could eat them and or turn them into gold.
Oh, it's the 15th, yeah.
His motive was never clear.
Yeah, even Robot Chicken made fun of that, like when they were doing the parody of that movie Seven, only with the Smurfs, and they think Gargamel, and they're like, well, you're always trying to kill the Smurfs. Yeah, but I want to turn the Smurfs into gold, not kill them after.
All right, I'm gonna cut you right the hell off, Chris. This is the 15th of April Bogosity thing I was talking about.
Yeah. Well, anyway, and then Brainy was like, I thought you wanted to eat the Smurfs. And he's like, actually, in all honesty, I don't know what I want to do with you guys half the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And besides, I could have killed all those.
He had said something like, I think I've always been ambiguous about what my goals in that area are.
Wait, do you mean the 13th of May?
15th of May.
There's no 15th of May. There's no 15th of May.
No, it was on February the 31st, remember?
There's no it was October the 42nd.
Yeah.
All right, now you guys are sending me mixed signals.
No, we're not. We're making fun of you very clearly.
The Smurfs were in the Black Cauldron. I think that's a very underrated Disney movie. I think it would have been good if they would have hired some better voice actors.
Yeah, I actually have fond memories of that one.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, if you're going to make an animated movie, why would you need to hire anyone other than Billy West and Tress MacNeille? You hire those two, you got all your voices taken care of.
Wait,
Yeah.
do you mean 15th of April? Because that's
I like Billy West when he's not voicing a
Yes.
politically, you know, a character that's just trying to be a political soapbox.
I like Billy West when he's hanging out with a robot.
Like when he voiced Mr. Butts, you know, that cigarette. You know. Actually, Shane, I saw a funny joke that made fun of, you know, the tobacco company industry where a guy goes up to a tobacco company and they're like, so how come you guys are spending hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying and defending yourselves? And he's like, because you guys are spending hundreds of millions of dollars trying to blame us for a personal choice of people. You know?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's like, you know, I mean, it's like the tobacco companies are not making people want to smoke. It's just, if you are addicted to cigarettes, that's your own problem.
Well, I remember, like, I think it was in the 80s, they made all this big deal about Joe Camel, and it was like, Joe Camel, oh, it's marketing to kids, and it's, they're doing this cartoon character to get kids to smoke. And then someone, I forget who it was, did this survey of a whole bunch of kids, asking them what they thought of Joe Camel, and most of them had never even heard of him.
Yeah, until
it's
you
like
brought
the
it up.
Satanic Panic all over again.
Until you brought it up, you know. Yeah, it's the Streisand effect, you know. I mean, I've told many SJWs that, you know, and all that when they were talking about punching Nazis, and they're like, well, we have to censor these people or else people are going to find out and join them. And I told them, guys, I had no fucking idea who Richard Spencer was until you were telling people to stop looking him up.
I don't think I've seen Richard Spencer once outside the context of that discussion about him being a Nazi or whatever.
Yeah, it's the Streisand effect. If you try to get a bunch of people to not look at someone, people are going to be like, huh, who is this guy anyway?
Yeah, I accidentally invoked that when I was changing costumes in the classroom in theater.
Yeah, and I was watching the podcast you did with Esoteric Entity, and it's just so sad. It's just so sad about how people are like, oh my, that one place wouldn't make a wedding cake for a gay wedding. Our civil liberties are ruined. It's like, no, it's just a private thing. It's just a private.
It's a private business.
Yeah.
Well, and the
acting
rhetoric
like
they
idiots,
told,
mate.
you know, they went around whining around, and everyone was like, oh no, they didn't throw them out because of what they asked for. They threw them out because of who they were. It's like, no, read the court transcripts. This is established.
Yeah,
he said quite clearly, it's like, look, I'll bake you anything else you want to. You want a birthday cake? I'll bake you a birthday cake.
Yeah.
You want, cupcakes or whatever? I'll do it. I just don't want to do that cake. I don't want to put my creative efforts into something I disagree with.
Yeah, and as a business owner, you should have the right to do it. Fun fact, SJWs, the Montgomery bus boycott didn't end because the government passed a law. It was because the bus companies were losing so much money from the boycott that they were like, you know what, screw the law, let them sit wherever the hell they want. We're losing money.
Well, and of course it was because of the law, and what they had to keep doing was they had to keep escalating the law to the point where they actually threatened to have police officers on every single bus enforcing it because the bus drivers weren't doing it.
Brian Mullins, the Fox, says, Twitter is full of bots anyway.
I'm a Juchi capitalist. I think that's an oxymoron there.
What is Juchi?
That's basically the form of communism that North Korean practices.
Ah, okay, yeah.
Excuse me, guys. I'm going to go to the bathroom. Daniel, don't make any references while I'm out, okay?
I'll try.
Well, as the old saying goes, if you ain't here to defend yourself.
North Korean communism is kind of like lunar oxygen or something like that.
Yeah,
I mean capitalism, North Korean capitalism.
North Korean capitalism, I still laugh when people say, well, North Korea is not real communism, and they even got rid of, they even removed communism from their constitution. Well, the thing is, it's not because they're anti-communist. That's because, remember, the North Koreans, they are very, very egotistical. Very egotistical.
I just think it's
Rid of that because to them, yeah, communism was invented by Karl Marx and not Kim Il-sung, and they want people to think that Kim Il-sung created everything.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just funny to me how whenever it looks like things are going great in the Soviet Union or Venezuela or Cuba or things like that, it's, see, that proves that socialism works and it's great. Yeah, in your face, capitalists. And then when the truth comes out and you find out how horrible things actually were, it's like, well, that's not real socialism. Did you see how capitalism ruined that country?
Oh yeah, like what Noam Chomsky said about Venezuela. He said, well, there was still a shit ton of private capitalism going on, and that's what ruined Venezuela. And then he asked them, what private capitalism? And they're like, there was private capitalism. Don't you see it?
What
Yeah.
private
I think
capitalism?
Noam
What
Chomsky
private
pretty much lost his
capitalism?
marbles. I mean, he's
Yeah.
gotten up there in years.
Specifically, what private capitalism has been going on in Venezuela that was not going on back when it was the richest country in Latin? That was not going on back when it was the richest country in Latin America.
Yeah, but then again, Noam Chomsky has always been a nut job. I mean, he was the one who said that that Genghis Khan was an ANCAP.
Somewhere, Genghis Khan is spinning in his grave.
Yeah. Actually, I was on a voice chat with this one group and an atheist, group, that was on Discord, and it's so sad because there's so many smart people on there, but sadly they can't apply that same logic to when it comes to the state, because I was bringing that up and the guy just kept saying, but in a libertarian capitalist society, what's going to keep one side from buying all the guns and all the resources and then imposing his will on you?
Hey, numbnuts. It's called human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, think through what happens if you try to buy up all of anything,
Yeah, I wish I could draw, because I have this funny idea for generation trope in a lot of sci-fi movies, and it shows a board of directors meeting that are going to be like, okay, people, so here's what's happened. This incident is going to cost us millions of dollars to clean up, and it could be bad PR. So I suggest we spend billions of dollars hiring a private army of mercenaries to block off the area, attack everyone, including government officials, and kill anyone that says anything negative about us. It's like, do these writers, do they even think?
They can't think, but they can meme.
Reminds me about for terrible writing advice, where he was talking about sci-fi and he was talking about a sci-fi dystopia, and he's like, and of course you should always make sure that there's a rich super upper class that is filthy stinking rich, meanwhile everyone else is dirt poor and can't afford everything. But don't go into the details about how such a society could actually function. The message and the agenda comes first before that.
Yeah, and just blame it on capitalism and move on.
I have a Tolkienian view on
that's a question I always.
As well as some dude posting memes saying they can't meme.
That Shane, that's the thing I always want to ask people that say that. People want to say capitalists want to just get rich and leave us all poor and penniless. To which I'm saying, why would a capitalist want to make his customers so poor that they can't buy his products?
Yeah, capitalists want everyone to be rich so they can buy stuff from them.
Yeah, if everyone is dirt poor and penniless, you're not going to make any money because nobody's buying your shit because they can't afford it.
Yeah, and that's the thing that really gets me when they start going, oh, well, you see, if businesses did a minimum wage, then workers would have more money to spend and the businesses would make more money. It's like, but if that were the case, then you wouldn't have to pass a law. Businesses are just going to raise wages on their own.
Oh, yep, that's another thing. That's another thing that destroys the gender pay gap. If women truly do make 75 cents for every dollar men make, okay, so capitalists are these evil, greedy people that put money before people. Well, if they're obsessed with saving money, why don't they just hire a bunch of women and save 25 cents?
Because women lead by emotion.
Yeah, and then it's like, and then they pull, well, it's because of the patriarchy and fraternity and all that. It's like, yeah, see, you're just jumping
Are they greedy or are they more greedy or are they sexist?
Yeah, it's like
Can't mind.
Yeah, it's like exactly, you know. And of course, I've seen a lot of women try to say, well, yeah, they don't deliberately do that. They pay the same, but what they often do is they'll pressure women to take a less thing. Like if a woman wants to be going to law, they'll pressure her to be a paralegal instead of a lawyer. To which I say, who the hell does that?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's like I don't see it, people. I don't see it.
Yeah, and it's like, well, because I mean, if you think about one of their basic claims, like wages are always kept at the bare subsistence level, and then at some point it gets worse to the point where they will go up and overthrow the capitalists and create the communist paradise. Well, wait a minute. If it starts off at bare subsistence level, how is it going to actually get worse from there?
Yeah.
Not to mention, women ruin everything. Ocean's 8.
Don't forget Mass Effect Andromeda.
Oh, I thought you were gonna mention that movie that I saw that I saw 2 years back that shall never be named.
Oh yeah, and don't forget about The Last Jedi.
Daniel!
What did we just say? What did we just say about the Streisand effect, Johnny?
Yeah. Yeah, just speaking of which, I'm talking about the Solo. I was looking up the Solo movie, and from what I've heard, even though it does have some SJW stuff in it, it's not that bad. Really, the biggest criticism I see, and this comes from a guy who's very apolitical, he didn't mention it, is that he mentions that Han Solo isn't really the focus of a movie. So it's like, it's called Han Solo, but Han
called Solo, but we call it Soilo.
It's called Solo, but Solo's more of like a side character.
You're saying it wrong, Chris.
It's
Soilo. Soilo.
All right, Johnny, let him speak.
As in Diet Han Solo.
I was about to say, when I heard that, I said, wow, that's really stupid. That's like saying you're going to make a movie about Darth Vader, but the movie's about Darth Vader's personal secretary, and he's talking about Darth Vader.
Here's the part I don't understand. I mean, it's not that I don't think a movie about a young Han Solo couldn't work, but I mean, they're talking about how, he's this, great hero for the, modern feminist 21st century, yada, yada, yada. It was like, wait a minute. A New Hope was the story of how he becomes a hero. He's not a hero at the start of the movie.
Yeah.
It's the story of how so, I mean, how is a young Solo going to be this hero?
Yeah.
Also, admittedly, a movie should have been a cakewalk if you could make 3 whole books about a young Han Solo.
Yeah. But remember, Daniel, Legends is canon and is confusing and inconsistent. That's why we had to can it. That's why we made Lando Calrissian pansexual, even though the only thing he did in Empire Strikes Back was flirt with Leia. Yeah. Yeah,
and you wonder why the West is cucked.
Yeah, I laugh so hard when, in all honesty, I don't believe for one single bit that Disney canned Legends because it was quote unquote too restraining or too inconsistent. They did it for one reason. When Disney acquires a property, they want a Disney-fy it, and they can't do that when there's an established lore, so they gotta get rid of it and basically make it Disney-fied.
Also, I feel like they're really shoehorning in LGBTQ+ characters just so they can use them as a shield.
Yeah,
Well, now
I mean, isn't that even more disrespectful to LGBTQ characters?
Yeah.
Say you don't get proper characters in your own right. We're just going to pander to you by just shoehorning them in like this.
Yeah, I was telling that to you, Shane. That's a big problem with a lot of Hollywood movies, even non-SJW Hollywood movies. It's that it's all about, we got to make a movie that we can market, when it should be, okay, we made this movie, now we got to figure out how to market it.
Yeah, you make the good movie and then you market it instead of
Hollywood.
Yeah, whereas if you make a movie for the sole purpose of marketing it, even if it is a somewhat entertaining movie, people are going to be like, that was a fun movie, but it just felt so cliche and all that, you know.
Well, I mean, this is why lately they've been saying, "Oh, it's all about the open weekend. You got to make the money on the opening weekend." Yeah, because no one wants to go and see that crap twice.
Yeah, you know. And by the way,
Shane, that's right.
And by the way, people love to say that that The Last Jedi is a good movie because it made $1 billion. Well, first of all, box office means nothing. There's a lot of movies that made a lot of money that I think are garbage, but still, And the thing is,
and you also had like one thing that pretty much everyone considers to be a really good movie, which is The Princess Bride, was a little bit of a flop in the theaters. It didn't find its audience until home video came out.
Yeah. By the way, Shane, I brought this up before with you guys, but I told this to people, who said, well, they need to have, expensive movies to make good movies these days because of all that. And I'm like, look at The Empire Strikes Back with the original Star Wars sequel. That was considered, a very great movie and very revolution for its time, even more than the first movie. It only had a budget of $15 million. And people said, oh, well, you're not adjusting for inflation. I did adjust for inflation. $15 million was only I think it was only about like $60 million in today's money. So,
hey, Pip, how you doing?
Hey, good morning. Sorry, mate.
Hey, it's
save me from these two.
Hey, it's the brony from Down Under, where women glow and men plunder.
Help. Send
whatever that means.
You never heard the song? Do you come from a land down under?
Yes, I know. I know the song. I know the song. I still don't know what it means.
Australia is not the land down under, though. That's Antarctica.
That's what I always thought. Shouldn't it be Antarctica that's down under?
Yeah, but nobody lives there. Except the
wait. Does Australia even exist?
Don't say it. Don't say it, Daniel.
It doesn't, and of course, the reason why no one lives in Antarctica is because they have to cover it up because people would see that Antarctica is the ice while surrounding the flat Earth. So they have to cover that up.
By the way, Shane, they had the dumbest excuse. They had a dumbest excuse for whatever. If the Earth is flat, then how come we don't, fall over it? They're like, well, it's because of the Pac-Man effect.
Oh yeah, that's a new thing among them. It's like when you get to
that is an insult to one of the greatest icons of the arcade '80s.
No, but it's the Pac-Man universe where you go off one side, you reappear on the other. So that's what the flat earthers say. When you reach the edge of the flat Earth, you automatically teleport to the other side.
Wait, what?
That's what they're saying now.
That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, you're right. Australia doesn't exist, but if you wait 14.5 hours, then we'll see.
Yeah, Australia, Australia, a cool country, but sadly, the Australian politicians have declared a war on fun.
Speaking of wars on fun, DC, this is from The Quartering, a.k.a. Jeremy, whatever his last name is. Jeez. What is technology having out for me today? All right. Hang on, guys. DC Comics Pro leaves the plantation and SJWs defame him and his family.
Yeah, but from what I've seen about the Australian, the banning fun thing, it seems to be pretty much the cities like, Perth and Canberra and things like that. I think if you're going to try that thing, about like towards the outback, you get a Bowie knife in your neck.
Nah, it's just you get far enough away from the urban areas, just nobody gives a shit. They don't care.
No one cares, yeah.
No, you get mauled to death by dingoes, and then animal rights groups, try to protect the dingoes and say, no, dingoes didn't eat you, your mother ate you.
Fun fact: do you know what famous literary character was stabbed in the heart with a Bowie knife?
Dracula.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing people fail to realize. Dracula wasn't killed by a wooden. Yeah, he wasn't killed by a wooden stake. He was killed by Quincy, and that actually was Quincy's last action.
I knew that he was stabbed with a knife. I didn't know it was a Bowie knife.
Yeah, Quincy stabbed him in the heart with a
Yeah, that's a really underappreciated character in the Dracula universe was Quincy. That guy was a badass. I mean, even after he was fatally stabbed and shot by the gypsies who were protecting Dracula, he still had the balls to crawl up to Dracula's crypt while he was take his knife and plunge it in Dracula's heart, and that was the very last thing he ever did.
And
yeah, but wasn't there something wasn't there something about it took him and John Harker, didn't it?
Yeah, Jonathan Harker slashed Dracula's throat with a kukri.
Yeah.
We need more.
It wasn't the case. It wasn't the case where as soon as the sun came up, he died. The sun just made him mortal so that they could kill him, or at least it was easier to kill him. It was just too difficult to kill him at night.
Burn to death when Dracula doesn't burn to death when he's exposed to sunlight. He's just mortal and he's vulnerable to attack. You know, that's why he sleeps.
Yeah, that's why he slept during the day. Yeah.
Yeah, because
people say I'm not a morning person.
Yeah. Another thing that also gets ignored about Dracula was that he could change his shape. He could turn into not just a bat, but he could also turn into a wolf, a rat, and even mist. And another thing that I think gets ignored is that when Dracula first appeared, he's this degraded old man, but as he drinks more and more blood and gains more power, he ages and becomes younger and more youthful.
As I remember it, though, he couldn't turn into like one bat. He had to turn into like a whole bunch of bats to like cover his same, volume or whatever.
Yeah. I think there's even some Dracula books that said it's implied that Dracula could turn into a dragon if he reached his absolute power, but he never reached that.
There are some features that aren't even necessarily listed in the novel. For example, Stoker intended him to be able to change his size.
Yeah. And the thing is, we don't know what Dracula is fully capable of because the novel Dracula is written in through like the writing style is basically like letters, from the characters to each other and their friends,
Right, so you only know what the characters.
Yeah, we only know what the characters know. So who knows what power Dracula was capable of?
Kind of an interesting way of writing things.
Yeah.
Also, on top of having no reflection, he could not be photographed or painted.
Yep.
There's a lot of
but I mean, there have been plenty of things like the Hunger Games trilogy is first person, so you only find out things about how the government works and what's going on as Katniss does. You don't really you're not privy to anything else before then.
Yeah.
That's any properly written first person novel is like that.
Actually, here's one minor thing I actually read about that actually I found was pretty impressive. That one person hated about the Hunger Games movie is that in the movie they confirmed that the entire world has been destroyed.
I love my job as a moveset maker, guys. Shane, I do movesets on the.
Can someone put a ball gag on Johnny, please?
All right, Chris, what were you saying? Chris, and then Pip was saying
later.
Chris, and then Pip was trying to say something. Too,
basically,
Chris, you first. Chris,
Hunger Games about the Hunger Games movie was that in the movie they more or less confirmed that every single landmass in the world except for Panem has been destroyed and it's underwater. Whereas in the book, it's never established what happened to the other continents. And one guy said, "You know what? I like to think that there was no cataclysm, global flood. I think the rest of the world is pretty much intact, but the Panem government deliberately says we're the only nation left to coerce people into not leaving."
So what were you saying, Pip?
I was just saying there's a lot of really nice mythology that goes completely underappreciated.
See also Vol'dun mythology.
All the time that Vlad the Impaler found marshmallows.
Well, it's kind of like Frankenstein.
Yeah, that was actually pretty.
In Frankenstein, the creature is actually fairly intelligent, and I mean, the movie's kind of being and like.
I read the novel, and basically the way the Frankenstein monster describes himself is that when he was first formed, he couldn't talk, and he was a little bit, of a dunce, but slowly as he, explored the environment, he slowly learned, and eventually he learned how to speak by spying on, travelers and all that, and he slowly learned to learn how to speak English, and I even think he learned how to speak a little bit of French too.
It's
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty intelligent.
It's a real shame because Boris Karloff has an amazing voice.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's actually fun fact. Bela Lugosi originally was interested in playing the part, but then at the last minute, the studio said, "No, let's make Frankenstein a monster that just goes around and grunts." And then Bela Lugosi's like, "Yeah, no, I'm not doing that." And then he turned it down, and then they went with Boris Karloff. You know.
No, I think he did end up playing the role later.
Yeah, he played it in a role, but they lied to him. They told him, you know, Frankenstein would be more intelligent. He would have the ability to talk, but they didn't do that.
It's a real shame because there's some really interesting dialogue that happens between Frankenstein and his monster.
Yeah, you know. Oh yeah, you know. I mean, you know. In all honesty, you know, people like to portray Frankenstein in the popular media as being this arrogant egotist, but in all honesty, I think he was slightly worse in the book because basically he was one of those types of people where it's like, oh, it came out wrong, screw it, I'm abandoning it. You know. Yeah, basically he just abandoned him, you know.
Abandoned him? The book, yes. The book he actively tried to kill him.
Yeah,
also, he
thought he had killed him, but it turns out he survived, and then he went out exploring and learned to do a bunch of stuff.
Also, he was a med school dropout.
Yeah. Another thing too, and this is something that people fail to.
Huh?
Yeah.
Because I read the book, and it basically the chapter says, the chapter where he quote unquote creates Frankenstein, he's saying, okay, I have all the body parts, now I just need to conduct the operation. And the next chapter is him saying, oh my god, this creature's ugly, what have I done? It never explains.
This comment from Captain Morgan isn't making a lot of sense to me. In 1984, is the theory that Airstrip 1 is the only territory. But Oceania is a lot more than just Airstrip 1. And you also had, you know, Eurasia and East Asia. And if none of them existed, then why would they have to go all of the revision to say, oh, no, we're not at war with Eurasia, we're at war with East Asia, and we were always at war with East Asia.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, Oceania is basically a unification between the United States, Mexico, Canada, and the British Commonwealth. So...
And I think basically Europe too. And then like Eastern Europe and on is Eurasia and the rest is Oceania.
Yeah. Yeah, basically
the rest is East Asia.
Yeah, like I haven't read the book, but from what I can gather, somewhere between World War II and, you know, 1984 when the novel takes place, the Soviet Union and the United States, you know, merge with a bunch of countries to form super nations to counter each other. So the United States annexes the British Empire and various other, you know, European and South American states, while Russia annexes China and a bunch of other places to form its own supercontinent.
Well, I don't think Orwell included any maps with the book, so I think a lot of that's guesswork. But yeah, the entire world is those three countries.
Yeah.
But I mean, why would you need to revise everything to say, oh, it's not Eurasia, it's East Asia, if you're making them up anyway and they're fictitious countries and you're just lying to the people about them? Why would you need to have the Ministry of Truth change everything?
You know, funny you bring up Angsaw. So because another myth about 1984 is that Big Brother was a fascist and he was like, you know, a stereotypical right-wing dictator. Actually, in the book, he was a socialist.
Ingsoc is the newspeak term for English socialism.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing that a lot of people fail to realize. You know, although George Orwell never spoke out against socialism, he did start to have his skepticism towards the end of his life. In all honesty, there's no doubt in my mind that had he lived, you know, to see Stalin die, and when Khrushchev, you know, I forgot what the term was, when he opened up, you know, about what was really going on in the Soviet Union, there's no doubt he would have said, you know what, I'm done. Socialism doesn't work. I'm done. Criticized, you know, socialism was simply because even though he saw what it was doing, he didn't know the exact details.
Hey, Chris, is your connection the same length as the same? Is your connection the same length as never mind.
Don't you dare make a penis joke.
Just blow him already.
Don't tempt it.
Fine, I'll take off my pants. Let's just get this over with. Yeah.
Did you just make a penis joke?
No,
yeah, but I think towards the end, Orwell was saying, yeah, socialism doesn't really make a lot of sense, and he ended up being a lot more of an individualist.
Yeah. Oh yeah. By the way, you know how people love to call you a fascist, you know, if they disagree with you? George Orwell was actually against the word fascism because of that. You know, I think I'm just paraphrasing here, but, you know, he says, you know, I've heard people throw fascism around like something. I've heard it being described to describe businessmen, labor unions, fox hunters, everyone, that I don't consider it a serious word anymore.
Yeah, and that was back in the 40s.
Yeah, basically George Orwell says, look, if you call someone a fascist solely on the purpose that you don't agree with them, you're pretty much losing the argument.
Well, there was a Britcom from the 80s called The Young Ones where Rick Mayall played this guy. There were 4 college students sharing a flat together, and Rick Mayall is one of those who is like, you know, the radical socialist type, and everyone and everything he doesn't like, who even slightly pisses him off, as a fascist.
Yeah. I saw a SpongeBob meme one time, and it was making fun of the episode Naughty Nautical Neighbors, the scene where Patrick calls SpongeBob a turkey, and SpongeBob goes, "What's that?" And he goes, "It's what you are." Only Patrick's labeled as Antifa, and SpongeBob has Milo Yiannopoulos' face plastered on him, and Patrick as Antifa goes, "Well, you're a fascist. What's that? It's what you are."
Yeah, I like that one where, you know, this is your wallet, except this is real socialism.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that one.
The left meme.
Not mine.
I saw a really good dub of that, actually.
Yeah. It's even more fun with Nazi Germany. People say Hitler was a conservative right-wing nut job. Okay, but his party was called the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Yeah, but that was just in name only. He wasn't a real socialist. Okay, so
even though he was like implementing like forced labor unions and minimum wage and social security.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that really grinds my gears is when trade union laborists, you know, love to say, yeah, but did you know that Hitler banned unions? No, he unified them under one national labor union.
Yeah, he nationalized them.
Yeah. You should cut out there, Shane.
Yeah, he nationalized. I think we're getting. I'm going to mute Johnny here for a second.
Yeah,
Johnny, we're gonna. I'm just muted you there for a second because we're getting a lot of background noise, and I think it's
something.
Okay.
Okay.
But anyway, go ahead, Shane.
Yeah, I forgot what I was talking about now.
You're talking about how Hitler didn't ban unions; he just nationalized them under a federally run union.
Oh yeah, and like this was something on the Discord earlier today. Someone was asking, it's like, well, are they right wing or are they left wing? And I posted a link to the to what Hitler actually said, like the different 21 planks were, and I mean, a couple of them were like, kill all the Jews and all.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's pretty funny because people keep saying that Hitler wasn't a socialist, because of, he was a warmonger and all that. And it's like, so basically you're saying, you have to be anti-war to be a socialist, even though if you look at the dictionary word of socialist, it has nothing to do with war and foreign policy. It's about economics, and economically speaking, Hitler was a socialist.
Yeah, but it's like I was about to say, it's like the other stuff, he really has a lot in common with the alt-right about like restricting immigration and jobs for Germans first. And if there's unemployment, then you kick out all the foreigners and things like that.
Yeah.
Captain Morgan. It's interesting because, you have the left who has a whole bunch of stuff in common with the Nazis. You have the right, who has a whole bunch of other stuff in common with the Nazis. And about the only group who doesn't have anything in common with the Nazis is us libertarians.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But people will still call us Nazis.
Yeah,
if you advocate for big government and state regulation in the economy and all that, you're going to end up having a lot of similarities with the Nazis and the Soviets, no matter which way you.
Oh yeah. And of course, I love it when libertarian. And I love it when
this is what big government does.
Yep.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying when Trump was talking about, build the wall, and it's like, wait a minute, when the Berlin Wall first went up, that was exactly the reasons they gave for it. They had to stop those fascists coming in from capitalist countries to destroy their wonderful commie paradise. And I mean, that's the same reason for building the wall. These people are ideologues, and they'll come over here and they'll change it to be,
Yeah, that's kind of completely and utterly hypocritical because the Soviets hired Nazis to run the East German government.
Shane, I still remember laughing at that one time when you and Mr. Dapperden were talking responding to that one guy's video, and he was praising the East German government, for airing TV shows about how to be a farmer and how to do this and that. And you're like, buddy, did you actually ever live in East Germany?
Yeah, I love doing that. I was researching all sorts of jokes that they were telling in East Germany because, like I said earlier, the jokes are what you can tell from, like, if a joke's popular, then it's something that really resonates with the people. And
like how do you double the value of your Trabant? You fill it up with gas.
Yeah.
My personal favorite, I think, I don't know if it was Yakov Smirnoff, but it was making fun of the Watergate scandal. And, he was talking about Richard Nixon, and he's like, I don't get why you Americans are so upset about Richard Nixon's party spying, wiretapping a hotel in the Soviet Union. That's basic room service. Yeah.
In America, you can always find a party. In Soviet Russia, the party always finds you.
Yeah. Oh my! Here's one I heard about the Soviet Union, but I've also heard it said about North Korea. I'm going to use North Korea because it's much more relevant. Two North Korean People's Police are patrolling in the neighborhood before curfew. They see a man. They see a man walking the streets, and they warn him, "You better be careful. Careful! Curfew's going to be in a half hour." And suddenly his partner pulls out a gun and shoots and kills him. And the guy's like, why did you kill him? He had a half hour to go. And the guy's like, yeah, but I know where he lives. He's not going to make it. Yeah. Or my personal favorite was what you said, Shane. It's, how can you tell if Stasi or the KGB has wiretapped your house? The lights are on.
I don't get it.
Because throughout the Soviet Union there was massive power shortages, so but if they're going to tap your phone and all that, they have to, have electricity on, so
Hello. Am I back now?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. I was just telling them the Stasi joke and John didn't get it.
That's some really bad static coming through.
There's two Shanes.
Huh? Is Shane secretly a ninja? Or did you accidentally clone?
He must have knew someone in the Kaminoans.
Obviously, the other one is Richard.
Yeah. Maybe Shane has a Kaminoan friend.
Huh?
You don't know who the Kaminoans are?
I'm just now hearing about this.
I don't get it. I missed the build-up.
Oh. Well, there was a duplicate of Shane, and I'm like, maybe Shane has a Kaminoan friend, and Johnny doesn't know what the Kaminoans are. They were those aliens that created the clone army of the Republic.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Kaminoan.
I know who the Kaminoans were. I missed the build-up.
Yeah. Yep, and sadly, all the clones have solid snake syndrome.
Wait, no, there's two Shanes again. What's going on here?
My internet keeps conking out. We might have
They're
to
multiplying.
How many
Shane,
of you are on the screen now?
I didn't know you had a cloning machine.
There's only one of me.
How did you not know you had a
Daniel,
cloning machine?
one of
How did you
Pipsqueak, and there's one of Chris.
Daxton clones?
Yeah, this is my internet conking out on me, so I have to keep coming back in. And I think every time I come back in, I show up as a different one. Give the chat window back. All right. Okay, am I back
to find
now?
some Florida man stuff.
By the way, Pipsqueak, some guy in the chat likes your pony.
Mm-hmm. I noticed.
Pipsqueak for president.
Yeah.
He's from Australia, not America. All right, let's take a look at this Florida.
Yeah, we don't have a president. We have a prime minister. Although sometimes he feels like a dictator.
Anyone who is familiar with
our prime minister right now is a useless idiot.
Then again, that's all Australian prime ministers, right?
No, I'm surprised you didn't get my reference.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't get my reference.
All right. It's time for everyone's favorite segment of the live stream.
Let's give it everything we've got.
I was about to say though, when you talked about the prime minister being an idiot, it kind of reminds me of this funny joke I saw one time that was making fun of Justin Trudeau, where there's a mentally retarded kid called Quirky, you know, who's having dinner, and he's talking to Justin Trudeau, and it ends with them leaving, and then one person who's new to that place goes, "What the hell was that retard?" And the guy owning the place goes, "I don't know. Normally Quirky comes here alone."
Anywho, it's time for everyone's favorite segment of the stream, the Florida Man segment.
Oh dear.
Oh, is this the one where I get my dick sucked?
Yeah, you're very funny.
Get in line.
You ready to suck then? Huh? You ready to suck? Of course, you want me to fuck you in the butt. Is that it?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Master Agent in the chat is talking about UK. Didn't like a member of Parliament threaten someone or something?
Anyway, Florida man arrested for driving stolen vehicle while monkey clings to chest.
Okay.
That's not even that surprising. That's just that's typical Florida man.
If this keeps up, I'm going to have to apply for my own zip code.
Yeah. Anyway.
How many of you are on the screen now?
Just one of you.
Okay.
But
just one of you. We don't need
outer space.
Yeah, I have no idea what you guys have been talking about. You know.
Johnny's doing some Florida man thing. I don't know what the hell that is.
You don't know who Florida Man is?
All I know about Florida is that the weather sucks. Is that the weather sucks ass and it's full of crocodiles. I mean alligators.
Blasphemy! Florida Man is a legend.
Yeah, Chris. It also has tons of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So basically, it's Queensland, except with a different type of gigantic water-dwelling lizard.
Yeah. And
so anywho, Florida sheriff reports monkey attack at Home Depot. I'm 2 stories in and I'm already losing my composure.
Yeah, and here's another thing about Florida. You know how Mexicans are in every single state now? In Florida, there are no Mexicans. It's just Cubans.
Oh, yeah, there's a reason for that.
Well, yeah.
Actually, do you know why there are no pools in Cuba?
Why?
Because all the Cubans who can swim are already here.
Yeah.
Please find
Cuba. Yeah, I actually saw a joke like that one time where a stereotypical redneck, you know, is talking to a communist, and he's talking about how perfect Cuba is, and he goes, "Oh yeah, if Cuba is so perfect, then why the fuck are Cubans coming here and becoming homeless bums in Florida instead of staying in Cuba?" Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you never see people building rickety little rafts to escape capitalist countries.
Yeah. Except that one woman who fled to Cuba, but that was because she was on. But that's because she didn't want to go to jail for murdering a bunch of innocent people. That one Black Panther lady.
Well, I mean, you had like between like 68 and 72 or something like that. The relations with Cuba had broken down to the point where there wasn't an extradition agreement, and so there was this huge just rash of airplane hijackings because they'd hijack a plane and demand to be taken to Cuba because they knew if they went to Cuba they wouldn't be extradited.
Yep.
Florida man drives date to sports bar on stolen Walmart mobility scooter. I swear you can't make this stuff up in the Onion.
Oh, you're reading from the Onion.
No, I'm not reading from the Onion. Stop putting words in my mouth.
Yeah, Joe Rogan said the Onion's the only reliable newspaper left in this world.
Yeah, the difference between the Onion and the other newspapers is the Onion tells you it's satire.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of sad when, life imitating art is all well and good, but when the art is satire, you're really got to be worried.
Yeah, in America, it's CNN, and in the British Commonwealth, it's the BBC.
Underwear-clad Florida man spends 4 hours yelling at people for proof of Wendy's.
Are you just doing like a Google News search for Florida man?
Try Twitter.
Yeah.
Well, I just did it on Google News, and I'm seeing Florida man takes pet monkey with him to steal car, deputies say. Florida
The world's worst sidekick.
Florida man shot dog for pooping in house, deputies say.
Oh my god.
What's next is Florida. What's
do
next?
A whole bogosity thing where we talk about nothing but Florida man stuff.
Yeah, what's next is Florida man gonna get a ticket for indecent exposure because they mistaken an alligator wrestling contest for a bestiality party.
Deputies link Florida man in crossbow shooting to other attacks.
There was a story about a Florida man hitting a toll booth with his car, flying out the front windshield for 20 feet. He went to hospital for like 3 days, came out, it was fine.
Florida man sentenced for fatal robbery of $4.
Actually, Pittsburgh.
Daniel were here so we can do that glorious laugh.
Actually, Pitsqueak. I actually saw this funny parody that was satiring Australia when they were trying to breed some of the animals like the reptiles back because the cane toads were killing them. And a lot of the creatures in Australia are venomous. And the joke was that Australia is under investigation for developing chemical weapons because they were breeding venomous snakes.
Roach lays egg in Florida man's ear.
Okay, that's just disgusting.
Anyway,
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, that would be.
Florida man makes bomb threats while riding airport baggage
that's how we can get rid of ISIS. Let's invite all the ISIS members on a one-way, on a plane ticket to Mecca, but we'll fill the entire plane with venomous snakes and flood the place with hormones.
Police arrest Florida man after zoo animals found in apartment. Oh, here's one that's a heartwarming little human nature story. Florida man makes stunning wedding dress out of toilet paper.
I don't know whether to find that funny or heartwarming.
Florida man tosses kittens.
Ah, that's just screwed up. Florida man sets out to solve important issues facing women. Hey, Daniel.
Huh?
We're doing Florida man stories.
Oh, dear.
Florida man caught masturbating tells police he's Captain Kirk from Star Trek.
Just nod and laugh.
What?
I'm reading actual headlines. I did a Google News search for Florida man, and I'm reading actual headlines.
All right. Let's see what other glorious stuff we can find.
Florida man gets head butted by alligator.
Florida woman who stole
Florida
a
man,
from a
Florida
hospital
man,
2 decades ago, raised the child as her own, sentenced to 18 years for kidnapping.
Florida man killed by exploding vape pen.
Oh God, that was two Chris's.
Yeah, sorry.
Massive.
I was trying to open up a different tab, but I accidentally pressed the X button.
Massive
presses X.
mushroom cloud. We get it. You vape.
Florida man arrested after he allegedly paid for one donut, stole 2 others from Walmart.
Florida man climbs atop playground equipment at Clearwater Park, tells kids where babies come from.
This is just sad. Florida woman whose job was to background applicants for concealed weapons permits couldn't figure out how to log into the system, so she gave out permits without any background checks for over a year.
Oh, Shane, sorry, but I gotta say this funny joke I read. It was about this one kid who asked a nun, and he's like, Sister Catherine, where do babies come from? And she goes, God created all children. And then he goes, oh no, Daddy, Mommy's cheating on you with God.
Florida man steals and crashes unmarked police car.
No one's laughing at my joke. Fine.
Man struck by lightning outside Florida condo complex.
We can hear you.
Yeah, we're hearing you. Florida man who shot liquor store clerk reportedly told him, "Remember my face." He did.
Oh yeah. I'm reading the comments. Yeah, Pitsqueak, your country was once humiliatingly defeated by a bunch of emus.
Florida man arrested on child abuse charge.
Balls to go to war against the emus.
Florida man arrested on child abuse charge after victim ate all the Cheez-Its.
Florida man performs hit and run. It's pulled over, pretends to be asleep.
Can we?
Well, that's an excellent example of how the state can screw anything up. All they did was send a couple of guys there with machine guns, and they completely failed to actually do anything about the problem. Meanwhile, there's a national park here in South Australia, a bit up north. They're having a serious feral goat problem. They put just a couple of $1 bounty on goats. And over the next few years, bounty hunters came up, shot almost all of the goats, and now you can barely find a single one in that park.
Wow.
Yeah.
This one isn't a joke. This is a good one. It's an example of what the liberals keep saying never happens. Florida man fatally shoots masked attacker, police say. So someone tried to attack him, and it was like, nope, this is a state that allows guns. So boom.
Florida man drives stolen car into ditch, has diaper-wearing monkey attached to him.
That must have been the same one I read.
Me?
No, there's a literal website, like an honest-to-God website called FloridaMan.com.
Jury awards $4 to family of Florida man killed by police, including $1 for funeral expenses.
Seriously?
Florida man has blood alcohol level 4 times legal limit.
Oh, you should see the kind of shit that goes down in Australia with that.
Nothing beats the world's worst superhero.
We regularly get people with blood alcohol so high they should be dead, but no, they're still conscious and driving.
Yeah, they're all Yep. Oh yeah, I mean, actually, Pip, I was watching this video about this one guy talking about this convention. He says the biggest thing that always ticks him off is we see people at these conventions just over drinking, and when you try to tell them you've had enough, they're like, "Oh no, I'm from Australia or Ireland. I drink more than this for breakfast," and then they pass out, and you have to call an ambulance on them.
Yeah,
Florida man.
The problem was you interrupted him. If he kept going, he would have been fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that what we're gonna do now?
You want to hear the story again?
No, I don't want to hear more Florida Man jokes. Sorry, they're just becoming old.
They're articles, dude. They're articles.
They're becoming old. Sorry.
Got articles.
It's like it's kind of like that one South Park episode where they say shit every 5 seconds. It's like, yeah, it's funny for the first 5 minutes. It's like, okay, we get it. You like to say shit.
Yeah, well, I got bored with that, so I did Florida Woman. Florida Woman says she saw Jesus in a horseshoe crab shell.
Huh.
Yeah, people see Jesus and people. Oh, here's a funny parody I saw. It was making fun of those I see things. It's where a guy says, "I saw a picture of Jesus inside a portrait of Jesus."
Was he drunk?
Yeah. By the way, I saw this one picture.
Let's do some Florida Woman stuff then.
I saw this one picture. It was a toast that a guy claimed had a picture of Jesus on it. I looked at it and I'm like, that's not Jesus. That's Frank Zappa.
All right, let's do some Florida Woman stuff, Shane.
Why does it hurt when
I'm scrolling down. Apparently, Florida women are a lot smarter than Florida men because I'm not seeing as many.
Australia man gets drunk and thinks he's a New Zealander.
Well, he's not Australian.
Actually, that reminds me. Actually, Pip, that reminds me of this one funny joke that one Australian guy said. You know how you tell the difference between a New Zealander and an Australian? Ask the guy, do you own a sheep? If he says yes, he's a New Zealander.
Actually, so this
Australian man pretends to be a pedophile to save trafficked children.
Yeah, actually, so this guy goes to New Zealand, and he sees this farmer, and he sees that the farmer has a sheep. And he says, shouldn't you be shearing that sheep? And the farmer says, fuck you, I ain't shearing them with anyone.
Oh, here's another one, a good one, in exactly the same vein as the woman.
You're roboting, Shane.
Slow one.
Yeah, you're cutting out, Shane.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My check.
Florida fends off robber armed with AK-47. Yeah, Florida woman.
This is why the left can't meme.
You went domo arigato on us, Shane.
No, a Florida woman fended off several attackers with an AK-47.
Nice.
That's pretty epic there. That's pretty epic.
But anyway, back to New Zealand, Pip. Have you seen pictures of New Zealand? That place is practically covered in sheep.
I've been to New Zealand.
Yeah, full of sheep.
Covered with sheep.
Yeah. It's full of sheep. What's next? Is their next prime minister going to have a sheep? Yeah. Probably be a lot better than anyone else that can do it. Yeah.
I bet their prime minister is a sheep.
New Zealand, a country of 4 million sheep. Some of whom have the vote.
Yeah.
Well, you have to if they're the offspring of citizens.
If the left can't meme, why are we doing it for them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard New Zealand used to have a lot of, diverse creatures, but then like Australia, they brought a bunch of animals with them and they killed everything. So now the only thing that remains in New Zealand are sheep, foxes, cats, and cats.
Kind of absolutely silly. In Australia, the possum is an endangered species. In New Zealand, it's a pest, which they kill regularly.
Yeah,
they're pests.
Can you send them over here, please?
Although I think the possums we have here are different from the ones in Australia, though.
Yeah. And of course, you got those cane toads.
Oh, don't even start with them.
Yeah. Is it true, Pitsqueak, that a popular game in Australia is to just find cane toads and hit them with a golf club?
In the Northern Territories, it is.
Yeah.
It's the only place human enough to actually support them. We don't get them down here in South Australia.
Yeah. And if you live in the outback and you spot them, they just shoot them because even though guns as a whole are mostly banned in Australia, they don't enforce that law in the outback.
Yeah, they have an exception for people who own land up over a certain amount because they know for a fact they cannot enforce it in the country areas.
Yeah. I mean, not to mention, you know, I mean, the Outback's a pretty rough place to live. You know, I mean, like, I think in the center of Australia, isn't the center of Australia just one giant savanna?
Yeah, in a lot of places, it's one giant desert.
Oh yeah, yeah.
No, we don't have any kind of hilarious because we don't even have any large land predators.
Yeah.
The biggest predator we have in Australia is basically the wedge-tailed eagle.
Oh.
But it's just
actually, if I recall correctly, Pipsqueak, they actually had to ban an episode of Peppa Pig because there's an episode of Peppa Pig where she was teaching children not to be afraid of spiders, and that's good for American and British children. But then the Australians pointed out, yeah, but you do realize we have a thing called the Sydney funnel-web spider here, and you don't want to get bitten by that thing.
Not just the Sydney funnel-web. There's redbacks, there's whitetails, there's all sorts of bloody things.
Don't forget the spontaneous.
The only thing we don't have that is poisonous is lizards. All lizards are non-venomous in Australia.
Nope, the lizards are non-venomous. However, if you fall asleep in the middle of nowhere and there's a lizard nearby,
you shake out your boots before putting them on in Australia.
Yeah. Oh no, wait,
guys,
the Komodo dragon doesn't live in Australia.
Go out to eat.
The Komodo dragon doesn't live in Australia. That lives on an island that's not.
I was on the middle of a live stream, Mom.
Yeah. Komodo dragons, they may not be poisonous, but they're nasty buggers.
Yeah, they're not venomous, but it's the rotting bacteria they carry in their bite that's the problem.
Actually, Pipsqueak, I read a really scary story about a Komodo dragon one time where there was an Australian tourist in the Komodo Islands, and he was hiking with his friends, and he sat down just to rest for a little bit because he wasn't feeling well, and they went back to look for him, and all they found left of him was bits of his t-shirt and his glasses. That's all the dragon left of him.
Entirely unsurprising.
Yeah, Komodo dragons, if it's made of meat, they're going to eat it. All of it. Even the bones. They're not picky eaters.
Okay, so next topic. I'm getting an echo from someone else.
That might be me.
I'm just going to say one real thing to Pipsqueak real quickly, though, first, you know, because I saw this one funny joke one time where a guy asked an Australian, if I had come across a Komodo dragon, how do I fight it? And he goes, do you got a piece of rotten steak in your pocket? No, why? Oh, well, then you're screwed.
Normally you would hear crickets chirping, but they were just so uncomfortable with exactly how unfunny that was.
I still think that one Mythbusters episode that would have worked about how to distract how to get past an attack dog, and one of the things they had tried was throwing steak at it, and it's like if they had like one more piece of steak, it totally would have worked.
Yeah, well that's the thing.
Dropped out, Chris.
One of their favorite foods is rotten meat, and if you have a rotten steak in your pocket, it'll. What?
You're dropping out, Chris.
It's pretty funny about poisonous creatures in Australia because you guys have all heard of burying in his girlfriend Sugar Tits, right?
Yep.
That spider in his house. Yeah, I heard that.
Sugar Tits. Yeah,
well,
Sugar Tits.
That's the thing you got to do in Australia. You have to play off the wildlife against each other. We have plenty of daddy long-legged spiders in my house, but they keep all the other nastiest shit away.
Yeah, it's pretty funny because Sugar Tits was in a video one time and she was like, everyone likes to make a joke that Australia has more poisonous creatures than people, yet I've lived in Sydney all my life and the only thing I've encountered was a house spider. However, one of my neighbors had a particularly nasty incident during Christmas where she noticed where as she was just adjusting her Christmas tree, she came across a tiger snake.
Yeah, that's pretty common. Snakes are pretty common around urban areas.
Yeah, I'm not sure what a tiger snake is.
It's a very venomous snake that lives in Australia. Basically, from what I've read, if you get bitten by a tiger snake, you've got about a half hour to get to the hospital, or else you're ground bred.
We got a lot of snakes here, but they're mostly black snakes that are pretty harmless. I think the only venomous one we have is the copperhead.
Yeah.
Yeah, tiger snakes aren't the most venomous, but they are one of the most aggressive.
Yeah.
Which is the problem. Like, the red-bellied black snake is more poisonous, but he's a pretty chill bro, and you can generally deal with him by just calling a snake catcher. And what they'll do is they'll basically catch it and then just throw it and just stick it somewhere that's uninhabited. Because as long as you leave the black snake alone, he won't bother you. But tiger snakes are nasty.
Yeah.
There's at least one rat snake that's living under the house in the crawl space, because a number of years ago I had this real problem with mice getting in the house, and I just couldn't get rid of them. I come home one day and I see a black snake slithering out of the house. After that, I didn't have a mouse problem anymore. And last week Iris is like, "Oh my God, there's a snake out there!" And I look out on the back porch, and the rat snake is there, just kind of sunning himself, and he has this bulge in the middle. I'm like, "Yeah." He got him something, and he slithered off back down to under the house after a while. But it's like, yep, he's doing his job.
Kind of reminds me. That reminds me of when. Oh, sorry, Pipsqueak.
You sort of have the same thing out beyond suburb limits. It's like his field mice are friggin' everywhere. It's like, just leave the snakes alone. They get rid of the mice.
Yeah.
And blue tongue lizards as well. Blue tongue lizards are great because they eat all the snails.
Yeah. That's another creature in Australia that'll kill you, the snail, more specifically the sea snail.
Oh yeah, that thing. That kills a lot of tourists. Because they're like, "Oh, what is this?" They pick it up and then they get bit by it.
Yep. You pick up the beautiful shell and then you notice this weird tube tentacle thing come at you and give you a nasty sting. And you're like, "Ow, that hurts. Ooh, that hurts." So then you go back to your hotel room and then you're like, "Okay, how come my legs aren't moving and I just lost control of my bowels? What's wrong with me?"
I just want something that'll kill wasps and stink bugs, because those are really bad around here.
Wasps are awful.
Yeah, actually, Pipsqueak. I've heard, one of the deadliest creatures in Australia is the jellyfish, and the scary thing is that the scary thing is that you can't see those sometimes. Yeah. Especially, you've heard of Irukandji, right?
No.
Oh, it's a really teeny tiny jellyfish. Like, it's only the size of the tip of a pencil, and yet if you get stung by one of those things for the next week or so, you're gonna be in pain city. And there's no antidote, and the pain is so intense that even really strong opioids won't work.
So they just put you in a medically induced coma then?
No, they basically hook you up to a bunch of machines and they treat you symptomatically, like as each symptom go, and just tries to stabilize you until your body naturally gets rid of the poison.
But you're in agony all the time, it sounds like.
Yep, you are. I saw a video one time where a couple of Australian documentary makers were making a documentary about the Irukandji, and unfortunately they both got stung, and it showed them in the hospital, and their skin was bright red, and the guy was like, "Okay, I'll try my best to describe my symptoms. It feels like my entire body's on fire. It's like these spasms. I'm very nauseous. I just feel like there's a bunch of electronic probes all over my body." And his female coworker, she was in so much pain she couldn't even give an interview.
Wow.
Yeah, and the creature's no bigger than a fingernail. Just, yeah. Man, jellyfish, you're evil. Yeah.
I thought the Man of War was supposed to be worse than the jellyfish, though.
Yeah. Fun fact, the Man of War is not a jellyfish.
The jellyfish are immortal, so... Or at least close.
That's debatable. They're not entirely sure. The thing is, there was actually one guy that said, that was asked, is it true that some types of jellyfish are immortal? It's like, well, you see, the thing is that we do know that they can go into a polyp phase, but here's the thing, though. We barely know anything about jellyfish. You know, we
I
barely
thought it was
know.
just one species that was supposed to work like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but
Well,
they got
the
nothing
jellyfish
on.
is basically a collection of organisms working together. If you keep breeding those organisms at the same rate they're dying, you could keep the jellyfish as a whole around for a very long time.
They're like the creature from The Thing, except minus the simulation and shapeshifting part.
I don't know, man. We don't know a lot about that.
Yeah,
Jellyfish.
that's how you
still don't know anything about.
Yeah, that's how you tell the difference between a jellyfish and a regular fish. See, when a regular fish bleeds, it's just tissue, but every little cell of the jellyfish is a living thing trying to survive.
But it sounds like it's not as resilient as like the sponge, because the sponge, you can like strain it through cheesecloth until it's like just a mist in the aquarium. 24 hours later, it'll have reassembled.
Yeah. Yeah, and contrary to how SpongeBob portrays it, jellyfish are not electric. They don't have the muscles to do that. I think the reason they do that in SpongeBob is because the real way jellyfish hurt you is even more painful.
Yeah, well, it's stinging. It's a venom.
Yeah, it's their tentacles are just littered with those tiny cells, and when the cells touch your skin, they shoot like hundreds of harpoons into you, which release tiny doses of venom. Now, on their own, they're not enough, but when you have a lot, millions of those things stinging you, they're able to inject enough venom to get enough concentrate into you.
Yeah, and the bigger you are, the more likelihood it is they're actually going to get a lot of them.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. And contrary to popular belief, you do not treat a jellyfish sting with pee. That doesn't work.
Well, it does. It just doesn't work any better than just pouring water over it.
Yeah. Yeah, they recommend using vodka or vinegar.
Or even just clean water, just not seawater.
Yeah, because the thing, and here's another thing, contrary to popular belief, it's not gonna, stop the venom. What it just does is that any cells that don't fire are either gonna get washed away, or in some situations, like with alcohol or vinegar, it'll kill the cell so it won't fire. But if there's already cells that have fired, the only thing that's gonna what pipsqueak?
Certain jellyfish white vinegar or alcohol will work because it'll actually neutralize the poison in the cell before it has a chance to fire.
But once those cells fire, the only thing that you can do is go to a hospital. Yeah. Although they do tend to,
mostly I think it's just about washing them all away.
Yeah. Although they do tend to over-exaggerate how deadly jellyfish are. Like, they love to say that the box jellyfish can kill you within 3 minutes, although a lot of Australians I've talked to said, yeah, but that rarely happens,
That would be like if a bunch of them get you at one time.
Yeah,
Yeah, that only happens under certain circumstances.
Yeah. And not to mention, as one person told me, if you hear a story about how a jellyfish, caused a person to die in only a handful of minutes, 99% of the time, it's more likely they were out in the open ocean, they got stung by a jellyfish and were put in so much pain that they couldn't swim and they drowned. That's why Australian lifeguards always tell you, if you think you've been bitten or stung by something in the water, the first thing you should always do is get out of the water, because you don't know how it's going to affect you.
Well, and apparently if you're stung like in the chest area, you can actually stop you breathing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can suffer from paralysis from a lot of different kinds of animals.
Yeah. Yep.
That's basically what killed the crocodile hunter, although it was a stingray, not a jellyfish, but it stung him to, like, right into the heart, and
although he died from blood loss because he made the mistake of pulling the barb out. Yeah.
I thought he had gotten a heart attack from it.
No, he died of blood loss.
Oh.
Yeah. Because stingray venom isn't that powerful, believe it or not.
Yeah. We initially thought it was a heart attack brought on by venom, but no. But then
no, yeah, it's been the doctor who tried to save Steve Irwin said what caused his death was blood loss because the people who were treating him pulled out part of the barb, which was basically, it was cutting into his tissue, but it was also keeping all the blood in.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's not a bee sting. You don't have to pull it out.
Yeah, it seems like if you're stabbed or you get something stuck and the thing they tell you to do is not pull it out, basically either you're going to get admitted to the hospital and the surgeon will take it out because they're in the operating theater and they can control the bleeding.
Like if you get stabbed like with something like if there's a knife that's stuck in your leg or something, what they often will tell you to do is just try to if you can, just try to clean the area around it, then take some absorbent tissue and put pressure around it, but don't actually pull it out.
Yeah, because actually,
I was taught we don't even clean it. Just get a bandage and actually bind the wound around it and try and get the navel as stable as possible.
Well, what's going to happen is the tissue is naturally going to swell up, and so it'll swell up around the knife or the stick or whatever it is and stop the bleeding. But if you pull it out, not only can you do more damage pulling it out, but also now it doesn't have anything to swell up against.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The idea that it has to be pulled out has actually gotten people killed. Many people actually agree that James Garfield would have survived had the doctors stopped trying to get the bullet out.
Oh, yeah, they don't take bullets out unless they're in a place where they're going to cause some real problems. Otherwise, that thing you see in the movies about they take the bullet out and it goes plink in the kidney bowl, plink, plink. They don't do that.
Yeah, it depends,
Now, can someone tell me, because I'm pretty sure this is a myth, but I've never really heard, that whole thing about, in the safari movies, someone gets bit by a snake and the other guy sucks out the venom. Is that like a...
No, that's a very bad idea, actually.
Yeah, that's a very bad idea.
It's also why you never wash a venom wound, because you can wash away the venom that the paramedics can then use to identify what kind of snake or spider it is. It's a very, very bad idea to try and...
not to mention, as one person pointed out, not only does it not work, even if it does work, the human mouth is... even if you brush your teeth on a regular basis, it's surprisingly pretty filthy. And so even if you did suck the venom out, but now you just introduced, hundreds of bacteria into that wound,
I just wasn't even sure it was even going to work.
The
real problem is actually ingesting the venom.
Yeah.
And that can get into your system really easily.
Because the way they portray it, they spit it out.
Very bad idea to try and suck venom out of it.
Which is pretty funny though, because I've actually heard. I mean, granted, I wouldn't actually do it, but I've actually heard with most types of venoms, you can actually drink a cup of it and be perfectly fine. Although you might feel a little queasy because in order for the venom to really affect you, it's got to get into your bloodstream. So unless you have not
the bloodstream, it's the lymphatic system, which is why you bind wounds with a splint to prevent it moving. Yeah. Because the primary means of moving stuff in the lymphatic system around is muscle movement.
Yeah, that's actually why in that one South Park episode when Cartman gives Kyle AIDS by taking a sample of his blood and injecting it into Kyle's mouth, one person actually pointed out unless Kyle had a tear in his mouth or his esophagus and stomach region, his chances of being infected would have been very, very slim because like I said HIV has to get into your bloodstream. It has to get into the bloodstream or the limbic system. If not,
you'd have to have an open sore in your mouth or something like that.
Yeah, if you were to inject the blood into the HIV virus can't survive in that environment, it'll get fried. Yeah, for how scary HIV is, it's actually a very, fragile virus if it's not in the right environment. That's why that's true
for a lot of pathogens, though.
Yeah, that's true for a lot of pathogens.
They said it's actually true of Ebola because you pretty much have to have direct contact with either the blood or excretions of an infected person because otherwise it's just going to die.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, 2 minutes left if you want to...
George Fjord brought up wanting an environment suit for Australia. No, it's not necessary. You got to learn to, everyone's so scared about all the aggressive and or venomous wildlife in Australia. You got to remember two things. One, you can play off the wildlife against itself because you get all the good wildlife in an area and it forces out the bad wildlife because you're competition between species. And two, most of the Australian wildlife is generally like Australians, lazy. Unless you attack it, it'll leave you the hell alone because it can't be bothered.
Yeah, Yeah, actually, Pipsqueak, another thing about the Sydney funnel web spider, one very unique thing about the Sydney funnel web spider is, I've even read, the females are actually pretty docile. It's actually the males that are pretty aggressive, especially when it's mating season.
I don't live in Victoria or New South Wales, so I don't know much about the funnel web spider. I don't need to. But,
that
is true for a lot of spiders. You have, like, the males are really aggressive, and the females just like, can you just go away? Please?
That's actually why a lot of people say if you're going to get a pet spider, get a female, because people like to assume that, well, the female spider's bigger, so she must be more badass, when actually the male spiders are known to be pretty aggressive. They're the ones that are going to bite you just because you looked at them funny. Females, they are, like you said, they have the attitude. It's like, as long as you don't try to squish me, I'll leave you alone.
All right, we got time for some parting shots before we have to go off. It's 8 o'clock now, so.
What? The night's young. That's party time.
I mean, we can go a few minutes over if you guys want to keep talking, but this is just our official end time.
Yeah.
Anything else or any parting shots? Anything anyone wants to say?
Nothing I can think of.
Yeah. Daniel's been kind of tight-lipped tonight.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's because Johnny's not here to egg him on and him to egg Johnny on.
It's okay, Daniel. Life is meaningless and we're all going to die, so.
Yeah.
Female mosquitoes are the one who bite you. Well, duh.
Yeah.
I know that. Yeah. Although the male mosquito might hold the secret to how we can kill most of the mosquitoes and possibly, make diseases like malaria and Zika either diminish or even go extinct. Did you hear about that program they're thinking about, Shane?
Well, I know there's the one they did with the GMO mosquitoes where they sent out males to mate with the female so that they would produce non-viable offspring.
Yeah, they're doing that. They're trying
to. That's one of the strategies they very commonly use. They basically catch a whole crapload of male mosquitoes and essentially make them sterile, and then release them back into the environment so they're competing with the actual virile males.
Because it's been observed that when female mosquitoes, when they do the act, the female will not accept any males. She'll flat out reject them, and so she produces offspring that doesn't work, because mosquitoes don't live very long. She'll die, but her eggs won't survive, so you have fewer mosquitoes.
Yep.
That or a very film layer of oil because it clogs up the larvae breathing tubes in the water.
Yeah. Of course, in Australia, it's not the mosquitoes you got to worry about; it's the cane toads. I've heard they've actually been able to limit those numbers and actually halt the spread of them, because there was a fear that they were going to take over all of Australia, but they eventually managed to halt them.
Yeah, wasn't that a case where they brought the cane toads in because there was some kind of insect that was eating the sugar cane they were trying to get rid of or something?
It was the cane beetle, and it was a complete not a failure of checking whether or not it doesn't actually eat the cane beetle, guys. You completely screwed up.
It was stupid. Yeah, and it was stupid was because their argument was the current pesticides we're using weren't affecting the cane beetle, but the government didn't want to spend any money, developing a new pesticide, so they just felt, let's just import a bunch of South American toads and see if they'll eat them. But cane toads didn't want to eat the beetle; they wanted to eat everything else, and because they're highly toxic, the other wildlife didn't know that, and they tried to eat. And when they try to eat it, they die. So, and because
non-native species can just cause all sorts of havoc.
Yeah. I mean, they also have hares. They also have, that's another thing, it's pretty funny because Pitsqueak, because I saw this one video about this one guy that was rounding up a bunch of bunnies and hares in Australia, and everyone's like, "Oh, why are you doing that to the cruel little bunny?" And a bunch of people from Australia were like, "Rabbits are rats in Australia. They're the equivalent of rats in Australia."
They're worse than rats. If you were to pick one species that has contributed the most to desertification in Australia, rabbit.
Yeah.
Because what they do is they ring bark trees because they eat the bark of trees. They can only get up so high, so they just go around the entire tree, and then the tree can't get sap flowing, and it eventually dies.
Yep.
And they do this to entire areas, and it's awful.
Yep, and then they tried to quell the rabbits by introducing foxes and cats, but the foxes and cats
foxes and cats were actually introduced as pets.
Yeah.
And foxes specifically for hunting.
Yeah.
People don't get how much havoc cats cause. They my.
Yeah, that's why I hate it when people let their cats go in the wild, because look, even if your cats are spayed and neutered and they don't have and they're injected for everything, you know what cats do when they're outside left to their own device? They're killing things.
Oh yeah, unless you're keeping your cat.
It doesn't matter if they're domesticated; they're still a predator.
Yeah, unless you're keeping your cat indoors 24/7, they are killing things.
Yeah, they're actually.
They did a study where it's like a cat only presents 1/3 of everything it kills to its owner.
Yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but I once talked to an Australian guy who said that that cats were such a problem that at one point in his town's history, it was only a township thing. They actually had a law that says if your cat is outside in the wild and an authority sees it, they have the legal right to shoot and kill it.
And if you punish your cat, say, no, don't do that, no, dead bird, that just means that the cat's not going to bring you anymore. It doesn't mean they're going to stop killing.
Yeah, that's what he told me, Pitsqueak. I don't know if that's true or not, but he said that in his particular town of Australia.
That is true for a lot of feral species, especially out in country. It's like you keep your cat inside or it's going to end up shot.
Yeah, because they're just so destructive. They're so destructive to the environment. We have to tell people they actually had to air a PSA saying don't let your cats out, no matter how much they're being annoying and they're meowing. You don't let them outside, because if you do, they're going to be going around killing the other animals. I mean, if I recall correctly, Australia lost a shit ton of its native bird population from cats that people brought in to catch mice, but then they let them out in the wild, and the cats found the birds more fun to kill than the mice.
Well, yeah, it's like, if you want to kill mice, just leave the snakes alone.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. Actually, I've actually heard that about people. They say don't get a cat to chase someone. You might get a snake. Snakes are 10 times better at doing it.
Get you a black snake. I'm all up on black snakes. I haven't seen a single mouse or rat since.
I've actually heard the thing about snakes. I don't know if it's true or not, but another thing about snakes is that while mice, are killed by cats, mice actually don't fear cats. They actually will just try to work their way around it, whereas they are legitimately afraid of snakes. And if they see a snake in the area, they will more or less, send a signal to all their other buddies, hey, there's a snake living there. Let's get out of here.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's not really a humane way of dealing with mice, because a lot of people say, oh, well, just catch it in a trap and then release it. They have very strong homing instincts. They'll find their way back.
Yeah, I mean, I know ants do this, but I've heard mice do it too. They will, leave tiny little amounts of pooping and peeing, but they're not doing that just because they're not courteous. They're doing that because they're peeing to tell their buddies, hey, this is where all the food is. Just follow the smell of urine and you'll find the food.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's seriously.
Speaking
of homing instincts, they recently did a study in the Northern Territory. A saltwater crocodile will swim up to 10 miles to get back to its normal hunting ground.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. They caught a bunch of saltwater crocodiles, put trackers on them, took them 10, 15 miles up the coast. They swam back. They found their old territory, no problem.
Yeah, and actually, Shane, this actually mentions what I tell people a lot. You know, when people say we need to get rid of zoos and all that because they're not living naturally, they're in a cage. It's like, look, if you were to open up all the cages in a zoo, almost all of the animals would stay put. You know, because if you look at real animals in the wild, real animals are very territorial, and they tend to do that. If they find a place that's full of plenty of food and shelter and not too many predators, they're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to settle down here and I'm going to stay here, and they don't move unless there's a reason to do so. Or
you get what happened in the UK. A bunch of animal activists released a whole crap load of minks. First thing the minks did is just spread out in the local area and slaughter the wildlife.
Yeah, I heard about that. They slaughtered the wildlife, and it was revealed that
well
some of the
done,
minks had.
Great job.
Well, and what they don't tell you is that when they release, the minks and the ferrets and everything else, they have to poke them with sticks because otherwise they'll stay in their cage because they like it there.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they like it there? They're safe from predators and they get free food every now and again.
Yeah, it's warm and yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, Pitsqueak, here's another funny thing I saw one time where people were showing me, a video, of a guy that was at a pork factory that was breaking the necks of, suckling pigs and all that, and they're talking about how cruel and inhumane it was, and I'm like, okay, so if you quickly break an animal's neck, that's cruel and inhumane and not natural, but if a wild dog rips off an animal's leg and then starts to eat its intestines from the butt to the front, and the animal's still alive, that's natural.
Vegetarians who say, "Oh, we shouldn't be cruel to animals," they have no idea how much effort actually goes into slaughtering animals humanely.
Yeah, and they don't know how animals treat each other in the wild.
It's like you're looking at even much earlier in the history, it's like you look at tomes and records from medieval times, what they would do before they would slaughter a bull, they would bring out a sledgehammer and smack it in the head to stun the animal before they actually slaughtered it.
Yeah.
So even back then, there was like, yeah, we got to make sure this thing doesn't feel any pain.
Yeah, there was actually one naturalist that said this, just people who said the biggest misconception we see, especially in Disney movies, is, when the predator kills an animal, it's a quick and swift death, but it's not. He's like, I've seen plenty of animals, and the way animals kill each other, it's slow and it's very painful. How in Jurassic Park when Dr. Grant says that velociraptors will eat you will start eating you even when you're still alive. That's what real animals do. Once they're sure they got their prey down, even if the prey is still, screaming and crying, they'll just start digging in. That's a challenge I would love. If it was possible, I would love to tell those vegans, just turn yourself into an animal and try to survive in the wild for a week.
These people think that nature is cute and cuddly. No, nature is brutal. Nature is unforgiving, and nature will fuck your shit up.
Yeah. I like how one guy has a theory of why we have so many vegans and vegetarians these days. It's not because, humans are evolving to become vegetarian like some of them like to believe. I think it's because they live in a society where we're so privileged, and in the developed world, we're so privileged and spoiled that we don't know what it's like to suffer. So the moment we see an animal cry, we go, oh my God, you're torturing that creature, because we don't really know what it's like to suffer.
Yeah, and humans have a tendency to anthropomorphize things.
Yeah,
assign human qualities to things that just don't deserve it.
Yeah,
sorry, I don't care.
What really makes me laugh, Pipsqueak, is when people say, oh, dolphins are smarter than humans because they do all this stuff, and I'm like, well, what's the proof the dolphins are smarter? And they show me pictures of dolphins doing tricks and all that, and I'm like, yeah, and I know plenty of dogs that can do that, and people aren't saying dogs are smarter than humans.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up because that was my internet going back down again. So
okay.
It's just not working well for me. But thanks, everyone, for listening. Thanks, Chris, Johnny, and Daniel, and Pip. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for your support.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.
All right, we'll do this again next month. Until then, you know the drill. Stay strong and be free.